What is it truly like to live and serve inside one of the world's most secretive and heavily militarized nations? What unseen reality lies behind the highly controlled image of the North Korean military? This is the story of a young man whose life is about to be consumed by the demands of the state. Meet Citizen Park Jung, whose destiny is now fundamentally intertwined with the vast military machine of North Korea. He stands on the precipice of his mandatory service, preparing to join the vast ranks that older soldiers sometimes half-jokingly refer to as the crybaby army, the challenging crucible of the nation's military boot camp. At the age of 17, Park has just completed his high school education. Under the strict laws of the Democratic People's Republic of Korea, all male citizens who are determined to be able-bodied and are of acceptable Songbun, the state's social classification system, must serve in the armed forces upon graduation. This isn't a voluntary choice. It is a compulsory duty, an expectation woven into the very fabric of North Korean citizenship. Park's physical fitness was not a matter of a single checkup, but rather a closely guarded secret process. His health had been discreetly assessed not once, but twice, at ages 15 and 16, by the local Military Mobilization Committee, MMC. Furthermore, his family had passed the crucial historical review, found to have no records of rebellion or disloyalty, thus ensuring his acceptable birth status. While there are a few narrow avenues to avoid conscription, such as severe illness, being the only child of a family dependent on his labor, or pursuing an advanced higher education, Park's good health and working-class background ensured his immediate enrollment. Based on information acquired in 2021, he is now ready to begin a demanding 7 to 8 year tour of duty as a member of the Korean People's Army, KPA. It is important to note that this duty is shared. The young women in his graduating class are also conscripted, though they face a slightly shorter 5-year term. But here lies a great historical shift, a crucial turn in the nation's priorities. Before the devastating famine of the 1990s, military service was genuinely viewed as a path to a better life. It carried immense social prestige, offered a reliable career track, and, most importantly, provided a guarantee of stable food rations that many civilians lacked. However, the economic landscape has changed dramatically. Today, for a significant portion of the population, working in other sectors offers higher, more consistent pay. This erosion of military prestige means that many citizens are now willing to go to extreme lengths to avoid the draft, viewing service as an economic hardship rather than an opportunity. The practice of feigning severe illness has become widespread. Even more common is the act of bribing local MMC officials to overlook an otherwise healthy candidate, a transaction that typically costs a recruit approximately a couple of months' wages, or roughly $100. The risk of this evasion is profound. If caught, draft dodgers face up to a year of detention in a punishing labor camp. Park, without the resources or the medical excuse, simply follows the expected path. Park is now integrated into the vast structure of the Korean People's Army, which is strategically divided into 5 core operational branches. These include the Conventional Fighting Force, the Korean People's Army Ground Force, the Naval and Aerial Divisions, the Korean People's Navy, and the Korean People's Air Force, the highly sensitive Korean People's Strategic Force, tasked with overseeing the nation's arsenal of ballistic missiles, and finally, the elite and highly trained Korean People's Special Operations Force. When we look at the sheer numbers, the scale of this mobilization becomes startling. North Korea maintains the 4th largest military in the world, with an estimated 1.3 million active personnel. This standing force is supported by a massive reserve, approximately 600,000 reservists, and up to 5.7 million members of the paramilitary Worker Peasant Red Guards. These staggering figures are not just statistics. They are the consequence of a national mandate that makes North Korea one of the most heavily militarized nations on the planet. A direct and uncompromising result of its state-defining defense-first policy. Park's journey from citizen to soldier begins with boot camp, or basic training. This brutal, formative process typically spans about 3 months, though recruits destined for highly specialized roles, such as the Special Operations Force or the Border Guards, may endure training cycles lasting anywhere from 6 months to a full year. The conditions in boot camp are notoriously harsh, characterized by unyielding discipline and physically intensive training. Park and his fellow recruits are relentlessly drilled in essential military skills: weapon proficiency, precision target practice, long and arduous marches while carrying heavy gear, and martial arts. But beyond the physical training, there is an element that truly defines the KPA experience: constant political indoctrination. This ideological training begins on day 1 and continues without interruption throughout the entire service term. The central message, drilled into their heads with ruthless repetition, emphasizes absolute service to the nation and its leadership, demanding total self-sacrifice for the betterment and security of North Korea. However, beneath the surface of hardship, an unexpected dynamic emerges. For decades, North Korea has been plagued by chronic food shortages. Even today, the harsh reality for the nation's poorer citizens is constant hunger, with missing meals being a regular occurrence. In a strange twist of fate, the military offers a temporary respite from this scarcity. In theory, those in boot camp are provided with 3 square meals per day. For young men from the lowest Songbun backgrounds, the military may ironically represent the most reliable way they have ever had to fill their stomachs. This makes us wonder, is service truly about ideology, or simply about survival for those at the bottom of society? Upon successful completion of basic training, Park is presented with his official soldier's ID and makes a formal binding oath of allegiance. He is assigned to the Korean People's Army Ground Force, the sheer size of which makes it the largest of the KPA branches. His issued weapon is the Type 88 assault rifle, a key piece of the Korean military's standard arsenal. This rifle is the North Korean-produced variant of the iconic AK-74, chambered for the 5.45 by 39mm round. The Type 88 comes in a few variations. The original model features a fixed wooden stock. The Type 88-1 has a side-folding stock. And the most updated version, the Type 88-2, boasts a top-folding steel stock. While the standard magazine capacity is 30 rounds, the Type 88-2 can be equipped with an impressive 75-round helical magazine, a unique design choice. The history of the KPA's arsenal runs deep into the Soviet era, with other weapons still in use, including the Type 68, a copy of the AKM, the Type 58, a clone of the original AK-47 Type 3, and non-AK weapons such as the SKS, the PPSH-41 submachine gun, and the RPG-7 rocket launcher, often in the form of North Korean or Chinese manufactured copies. Park is also issued his uniform, a camouflage pattern carefully designed to blend in with the temperate climate of the Korean peninsula. Although the official KPA designation for the uniform is often uncertain, the pattern bears a striking resemblance to the South Korean woodland pattern, which itself was an adaptation of the M81 woodland uniform used by the United States from 1981 until the mid-2000s. This similarity was so close that it caused genuine concern in Seoul, forcing the South Koreans to switch their uniforms to a modern digital pattern, specifically to avoid potentially disastrous battlefield confusion between the two armies. The military, despite its outward strength, hides a critical weakness. North Korea spends an astonishing amount on its defense. Nearly a quarter of the nation's gross domestic product, GDP, is dedicated to the military budget. While that sounds like an immense commitment, the reality is that the North Korean economy is so sluggish and isolated that this translates to an estimated 7 to 11 billion US dollars annually. To put this number into perspective, South Korea spends roughly $48 billion a year on its defense, and the United States budget stands at around $1 trillion. This massive resource disparity means the KPA constantly struggles with a critical lack of resources. A vast amount of North Korea's equipment is severely aging and in poor condition, with stockpiles often outdated and in disrepair, mostly originating from Soviet or Chinese surplus. Disturbing reports even suggest that the KPA still fields Soviet-era T-34 tanks, a model famously used during the Second World War. How can a military relying on such outdated hardware maintain its readiness on the world's most tense border? Like the majority of North Korea's military personnel, Private Park is stationed in the southern region of the country, close to the demilitarized zone, DMZ, the fortified boundary separating it from South Korea. This line is widely regarded as the most heavily defended and monitored border on the planet. Day in and day out, he and the rest of his unit maintain a state of constant readiness, prepared either to defend North Korea against an attack from South Korea and their American allies, or to execute a sudden sweep across the DMZ to achieve the long-held national goal of unifying the Korean peninsula under a single banner. A typical day for Park is defined by an exacting, monotonous routine designed to crush individuality and forge obedience. His schedule begins with a 5:40 a.m. wake-up, followed immediately by running and intense calisthenics, including push-ups, until 6:10 a.m. A brief, often chilly, soapy wash in a nearby river precedes breakfast at 6:40 a.m., which consists of small, regulated portions of corn, vegetables, and cereal or rice. The rest of the morning and afternoon is a relentless cycle. Roll call, exhaustive training drills, shooting exercises, lunch, meticulous weapon cleaning, and more training, with a brief rest period finally arriving at 5:40 p.m. After dinner, the soldiers are allowed a small window of recreational time for sports, card games, and even smoking. Laundry is usually a weekly affair. The day concludes with an evening roll call at 8 p.m. and mandatory sleep at 9 p.m. Adding to their military duties during the crucial farming months of May, June, October, and November, soldiers are also expected to perform mandatory labor on state farms or construction projects, effectively acting as an unpaid labor force for the state. Though soldiers are generally better fed than much of the civilian population, the promise of 3 meals a day is often an unkept one, a casualty of the nation's perennial food scarcity. And while North Korea has not engaged in a major full-scale conflict since the 1950s armistice, the possibility of Private Park being sent to a war zone remains a distinct threat. North Korean troops have historically been deployed globally to support national ambitions and influence, with confirmed involvement in conflicts like the Vietnam War, the Yom Kippur War, and various operations across Africa. However, because North Korea is one of the world's least transparent nations, details regarding these past operations are extremely difficult to confirm. The most recent and highly scrutinized deployment involves North Korean soldiers, alongside weapons and munitions, being sent to Russia to assist in the ongoing conflict in Ukraine. There is a tremendous and persistent international controversy about the specific function of these troops. Are they actively engaged in combat? Are they engineers working in safe rear areas? Or are they merely observers and technical advisors? What classified missions are these men actually undertaking in distant lands? For Park Jung, every day is a battle against the overwhelming control of the state, and he often dreams of escaping to a better, freer life. But the brutal reality of military discipline in North Korea is always present. Even the slightest perceived infraction can result in severe, disproportionate punishment. As a stark example, A pair of soldiers recently faced harsh disciplinary action simply for referring to South Korea by an alternative name that implied the South Korean government was a legitimate entity. The consequences for those who actually attempt to flee are horrific. Up to 5 years of imprisonment where they are subjected to hard labor, regular beatings, minimal sleep, inadequate medical attention, and chronic food deprivation. Adding a final agonizing layer to his dilemma is North Korea's infamous three-generation rule. This draconian policy dictates that any crime committed by an individual will carry the burden of collective punishment, extending the consequences to 3 generations of their family. This means that even if Park were to successfully escape across the border to freedom, his parents, siblings, and possibly future generations would face immediate, devastating consequences for his action. It is a sacrifice he will not allow. Resigned to the harsh realities of his fate, Park Jung simply accepts his continuous life of difficult labor, poor food, and strict treatment. He continues his service, just one soldier of many, a vital, silent component in the immense machine of the Hermit Kingdom. If you found this deep dive into the North Korean military compelling and want to understand the inner workings of closed regimes, make sure to like this video, share your insights in the comments below, and subscribe for more captivating animated history documentaries. Our purpose is to bring history and current events to life in an engaging and accessible way. Remember, all the historical context, events, and facts presented are based on respected historians and journalistic reports, with the relevant references available on screen. Stay tuned for our next episode.